الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. اللهم اجعلنا منهم ومن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. آمين يا رب العالمين. ثم مع بعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام.
Inshallah ta'ala, today we'll be discussing a story from the stories of the Quran, and one of these, and the story in itself, it's a very beneficial story, especially for this day and age. And this story is mentioned along with a few stories that are mentioned in Surah Al-Kahf. Obviously, we know the famous story in Surah Al-Kahf, the story of the people who were outcasts and they were in the cave. There's also a story of Musa and Khidr. And there's also this story. This story has two stories, actually. It's referred to either as the believers and the disbelievers, or the man with two gardens. So this story, Allah Azza wa Jal, He mentions this in Surah Al-Kahf. Right after He makes mention of the story of Al-Kahf, so the story of the cave. Right after that, Allah Azza wa Jal makes mention of this. And Allah Azza wa Jal, He makes mention of this in order to teach first the people at that time, the Quraysh and the Muslims at that time, of what not to do, examples of what not to do. And obviously this is beneficial for us. Allah Azza wa Jalla says that He tells us what's the reason for Him to tell us the stories of the past. It's not just because it's stories, it's because we can learn something from it. So this man, Allah Azza wa Jalla had granted him two massive farms, two massive huge gardens. And Allah Azza wa Jalla says in the Quran, "Unrub lahum mathalan rajulayn ja'alna li ahadihima jannatayn." That Allah Azza wa Jalla had granted this man two gardens. And two gardens, they're very, very not normal. They're not normal gardens. They're very, very well sought after gardens. They had grapes, they had palm trees. These gardens were very precious at that time. And obviously, grapes and palm trees being one of the best fruits you can get that at that time, especially in the middle of nowhere. And these two gardens had both of them. So they had grapes and palm trees, and they had other fruits as well. They had maybe apple or whatever fruits they had at that time. They obviously had that, but the main attraction were grape and palm trees, because grape trees, they're weak, yes, they die out quickly, but they're very, very precious. They're very valuable. And palm trees, obviously, they're strong. The leaves are used for other things and stuff. And obviously, dates, they give you nutrition, and it's sunnah to have dates. وَحَفَفْنَاهُمَا, that Allah Azza wa Jal had given him, Allah Azza wa Jal had granted this man a sort of barricade. So, like I mentioned, grape trees are very weak. They're not very strong. So, Allah Azza wa Jal had positioned these grape trees in the middle of the palm trees. So the palm trees, if anything came and hit the garden, it would hit the palm trees. Palm trees are obviously very, very strong. If you've ever gone to any palm tree, especially if you go to Saudi Arabia or any of the Middle Eastern countries, you see palm trees everywhere. They're very, very strong trees, sturdy trees. And some people even, out of the leaves, they make seats or chairs out of the leaves of the palm trees. So these palm trees are obviously strong. Allah Azza wa Jal had made it so that the palm trees are now protecting the grape trees in such a way that only Allah Azza wa Jal could do. And Allah Azza wa Jal had blessed him. Obviously, it's not one garden, it's two gardens. So you can imagine both of these gardens, they're giving out maximum fruit. So every single year, they're giving the most amount of fruit possible. Every single year, they're giving the most amount of produce. Obviously, there's not just grape and palm trees. There's other fruits. There's probably wheat, rice, or some other crops as well, along with it. And not only was he blessed with this, but also he had rivers. He had a river running through his garden. So he didn't even have to worry about watering them. Allah Azza wa Jal had caused this natural blessing for him, that there's no loss of crops, there's no loss of anything. Normally people would worry if it doesn't rain, then my crops will die. If an infection affects my plants, or something like mice or something comes and eats the plant or something, they're always worried. And Allah Azza wa Jal had made this garden worry-free, more or less, for the owner. He didn't even have to water them to that point. And obviously, Allah Azza wa Jal not only blessed him with the best fruits, with the best quality, but also the most amount of quantity. So he would produce the most out of everyone else. And Allah says, آتت أكلها ولم تظلم منه شيئا, that these rivers had been going through the garden and he never ever had to water them. He's never ever had to go and physically go and water the plants, because Allah had caused gushes of water to come in, and the best quality of fruits. And you can imagine, whenever you eat a fruit, it's always better when you wash it. Obviously, you always have to wash it, but let's say it's been washed once and it gets shipped. It's always better when it's washed. So you can imagine, not normal water, but water which comes from a spring, a pure water. That water is what Allah Azza wa Jal uses in order to grow these plants. So these plants are going to be the best of the best. وَكَانَ لَهُ ثَمَرٌ. And not only did he have these gardens, but he also had wealth, and he had money, and he had horses, he had houses, he had animals, he had like livestock, so sheep, cows, and stuff like that, stuff that were worth a lot back then. To this day, it would be like having a car or a house or a mansion or something like that. So this man was obviously probably the richest man of his town, and he was very, very rich. And Allah Azza wa Jal was the one who blessed him with all of this. So he says, one day Allah Azza wa Jal mentions in the Quran that فَقَالَ لِصَاحِبِهِ, one day he went to his friend, his sahib, so his close friend. وَهُوَ يُحَاوِرُ, that they started conversation with one another, they started talking to one another. أَنَا أَكْثَرُ مِنْكَ مَالًا وَعَزُّ نَفَرًا, that he started a conversation. Obviously, conversations, they go on, they switch topics every single time. Whenever you talk to someone, you get bored of one topic, so you switch over. So one of the conversations the man started was that I am richer than you. I've got more children than you. Not only have I got more children than you, obviously children back then were very, very precious. The more children you had showed the more power you had. You had more influence. Back then, obviously, you didn't have like billions and billions of people. You had a few million perhaps. And the more children you had, the more legacy you left behind, and the more work you can do. So he said that my family is more noble because we're rich. My family has more members because I have a lot of sons. So I've got everything. And Allah Azza wa Jal, all these verses, if you realize that Allah Azza wa Jal is praising his garden, Allah Azza wa Jal is saying good things about this garden. And he says that Allah Azza wa Jal has, I've also, he doesn't mention that Allah Azza wa Jal has given him. He says that I have got all of this garden. This is my garden. This is mine. He started saying, Ana, me. Ana akthar. I have got this. And Allah Azza wa Jal says that he was not the one who got it. Allah was the one who gave it to him. This does not belong to him. This garden of his, these children, this wealth of his does not belong to him. He did not thank Allah Azza wa Jal. And last week we discussed that the story of the sons and the father and the garden that gave out lots of produce, and they were being very, very stingy. And obviously they didn't say, Inshallah, tomorrow we'll do this. Now this man, on the other hand, very similar story, but obviously it's in a different time frame. This man, he ascribed everything to himself. He said, when he was talking to the man, he was saying, I was the one who built the garden. I was the one who got all of this money. I am the one who did this. I am the one who did that. And he assumes out of his own intelligence that he was the one who did all the hard work, my education, my effort, my wealth, my children. And he didn't even take into account that Allah Azza wa Jal had blessed him with all of this. And he assumed that all of his wealth came from himself and himself alone, and no one had given to him. And the man, he's just stood quiet. He's like, look, I've got all of this. Me, I've got all of this. You have nothing. You don't have any of this. Obviously, he's technically insulting the man. He's insulting his own friend, saying that I've got this, you don't have it. I've got this as well, you don't have any of it. وَدَخَلَ جَنَّهُ وَهُوَ ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ. That Allah Azza wa Jal says that as soon as he started this conversation, and obviously they were having this conversation in his own garden or nearby his garden, and he's saying, Allah Azza wa Jal is saying that as soon as he entered the garden, he was doomed. From the beginning, he was doomed because Allah Azza wa Jal knows what he's gonna do. And he obviously started the talk, and he kept on saying again and again that it's just me. وَمَا أَظُنُّ السَّاعَةَ قَائِمَةً. That his arrogance again and again. He's saying that this was me. I am the one who got this garden. I am the one who did this. And then he says, وَمَا أَظُنُّ السَّاعَةَ قَائِمَةً. That I don't think there is a day of judgment. I don't think that there is a day of judgment. As soon as he said this, you can clearly see that he's so arrogant. He's not like a normal man. He's not like a normal person. He's saying that the day of judgment, it doesn't exist. وَلَئِنْ رُدِدتُّ إِلَىٰ رَبِّي. That if it exists, so he's saying perhaps it might, perhaps it's not. So clearly he doesn't have the belief that there is a day of judgment. If there is, إِلَىٰ رَبِّي لَأَجِدَنَّ خَيْرٌ مِنْهَا مُنْقَلَبًا. That if there is a day of judgment, then I will go to my Lord and I will say to him, and I will deserve something better than what I have right now. So the garden I have right now is not enough. If there is a day of judgment, then I want something better than this. And this man, rich man, he's not a rich man. He's a miskeen. He's a miskeen, reason being of what is going to happen next. This miskeen, he thinks that because he's rich in the world, he's the richest person in the area, that if you're rich, you get riches in the hereafter. If you're rich, then Allah Azza wa Jalla loves you. And this man is so deluded that he thinks that since he's got money now, he's gonna have money for the rest of his life, and he's gonna have money in the hereafter as well. The fact that he's rich shows that Allah loves him. That's what this man thought. And he thought that Allah Azza wa Jalla is happy with me. That's why Allah has given me so much. I've got such a good health, I've got such good property, such good children. And one thing we need to learn from here, that Allah Azza wa Jalla gives this dunya to the mu'min and the fasiq, to the mu'min and the kafir, to both. Everyone, Allah Azza wa Jalla gives everyone the dunya. And everyone gets the dunya at the time of ease. Everyone's happy. Everyone's like, yes, I've got the best thing in the world. I'm happy. But as soon as the test and trial comes, the Muslims, they turn to Allah Azza wa Jal, and the kuffar and the fasiq, they have nowhere to turn. And that's the difference. This man, he thought that Allah Azza wa Jal loves me, that's why he gives me everything. He didn't understand that this was all a test from Allah. Allah will give everyone everything if they ask for it, and if Allah Azza wa Jal wills it, Allah will give them anything. Same way, the richest billionaire of the world, are they all Muslim? No. Allah Azza wa Jal gives wealth to whomever He wants. And this is a test and trial for them. And on the other hand, you shouldn't be a Muslim who seeks poverty. Because you think, oh, because I'm poor, Allah Azza wa Jal let me go free. What have you done to come out of that poverty? Because once you're poor, what happens? You rely on other people. Which other people? The Muslims. You're relying on the Muslims, and you're technically putting burden on them. So being poor isn't an option, and being rich is okay, because majority of the Sahaba, if you look at the Ashar Mubashara, majority of them were rich. They were rich, and there was nothing wrong with it, because they gave to the poor. They were never arrogant like this man. This man, he rejects the day of judgment. And then later on, the man now speaks up. All of this time, the man is saying, I am this, I got this, everything. He's saying everything to this guy, this friend. And as soon as he mentions that I don't believe in the day of judgment and I do not believe in Allah, as in I don't believe that there is a day of judgment which Allah has destined me to go, as soon as Allah Azza wa Jal is mocked, that's when he starts talking. The man starts talking. All this time he's been mocking him. He didn't say a single word. His ego is being shattered. Imagine someone ridiculing you in front of everyone you know, saying the worst things about you, making you look so bad. The man is this is exactly what the man did to him. But he didn't speak out whatsoever. He didn't speak out. But as soon as he came to the word of Allah, when he started mocking Allah, that's when he starts speaking. And he didn't stay quiet. When the time came, he talked. قال له صاحبه. So the man spoke out. وهو يحاور. أكفرت بالذي خلق. Are you rejecting Allah? Are you rejecting Allah? And kafara, akafarta, he's asking him, are you rejecting Allah? Meaning that, number one, what's a kuffar? A kuffar is someone who doesn't believe in Allah. Obviously, this is the normal definition everyone knows. But there's another definition, which is, why are you ungrateful to Allah? A kafir is also someone who is ungrateful to Allah or who doesn't give Allah Azza wa Jal his rights. The people of the Quraysh, they acknowledged Allah. They acknowledged that Allah Azza wa Jal is there. They used to worship Allah, but they also used to worship the idols. So they used to take away that privilege. They used to take away this direct connection with Allah. They used to worship the idols instead. So they were ungrateful to Allah because they didn't worship Allah directly. So kafara means that you reject Allah. That's one of the definitions. The other one is that you're ungrateful. You are ungrateful. And this man, he was obviously ungrateful because he said, I did this. And if you look at the verses in the beginning, Allah says, we. Allah is describing it to himself. Allah is saying, we did this, we did this. And the man comes along and said, no, I did this. So he's arrogant. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, in a clear hadith, he said that no person with even an atom's weight of arrogance can enter Jannah. If you are arrogant, there is no space for you in Jannah. لَكِنَّهُ اللَّهُ رَبِّي وَلَا أُشْرِكُ بِهِ أَحَدًا. The man said, so the sahib, the companion, he said that if you think what you think, so you believe that there's no day of judgment, you believe that you did all of this. As for me, indeed I believe in the Lord and I believe in Allah and I do not associate any partners with my Lord. Now, this man, he's saying to the other person that you are associating partners. When did he ever mention that he's associating partners with anyone? He's ungrateful, yes. He's rejected the day of judgment, yes. But he hasn't said that I'm going to go worship another idol. But when you attribute, obviously, we discussed right from the very beginning, the Tawheed, the fundamentals of Tawheed. Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Tawheed Asma wa Sifat, and Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. The man, he has ascribed the blessings of Allah to himself. So he has made himself an associate. He has given himself a name of Allah, Asma wa Sifat. He has given him one of these attributes. He has given himself the fact that he has grown the garden. And he has associated himself and made himself into an idol. And he said that as soon as I enter Jannah, I will get whatever I want. So he has ascribed to himself that he is able to do everything and that he will have wealth forever, and also that he will go to Jannah because he's rich. So he's making all of this, and he has ascribed upon himself. He's saying that he is either equivalent to Allah or even better than Allah. This is the shirk that he has committed. وَلَوْلَا إِذْ دَخَلْتَ, that Allah Azza wa Jal says, the man says to him, Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran that the man said to him, you should have humility, humbleness, that you entered this garden. As soon as you entered this garden, you shouldn't be arrogant. You are blessed with this garden. Thank Allah. Have humility, humbleness. You should have thanked Allah, and you should have said that this is a blessing from Allah, not that you have done this. You should have said, whenever you get something good, always ascribe it to Allah Azza wa Jal. Always ascribe it to Allah. Thank Allah wherever you are, and Allah Azza wa Jal will come running to you. Always remember Allah. This is the same thing we've said last week. Whenever you remember Allah at the time of ease, at the time of blessings, Allah will come running to you at the time of hardship, at the time of tests and trials. And he shouldn't have said that this is what I have created, this is what I have made, this is my garden. He should have said, MashaAllah, Allah Azza wa Jal has blessed me with this. Allah Azza wa Jal has blessed me. This is the power of Allah. And I had no power to make this garden happen. This is not of my effort. This is not my wealth. This is the blessings of Allah. He should have said this. إِن تَرَنِي أَنَا أَقَلَّ مِنْكَ مَالًا وَوَلَدًا. That the man said to the rich man, so the Sahib said to the rich man, that if you feel that I am lower than you, I am a lower class than you, then I have less money than you, I have less children than you, then it is possible that after we die, Allah Azza wa Jal will bless me with a higher status than you in Jannah. So the man said that even though I'm poor, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to go to Jannah. And even though you're rich, doesn't mean you're going to go Jannah. It depends on what deeds you do. The deeds are yours. Whenever you die, there's no one going to be with you. You're going to be by yourself, you and your deeds, nothing else. So the man is saying that your garden, your wealth, your children, they won't help you. It doesn't mean that you've got all of this in this world. Either Allah might, possibly might, He might give me the same thing that you have been given, i.e. all the gardens and everything. Or if not, if I don't get in this world, maybe in the hereafter I will. In the day of judgment, Allah will bless me. After the day of judgment in Jannah, Allah will bless me with what I've not gotten in this world. And he says that fear Allah. Fear Allah, or else the punishment will come to you. The water, obviously this was very, very unique. A stream of water flowing in the middle of your garden. This is something very unique. So he said that this stream of water, it could just go. And as they were talking, as he was saying this, while they were saying this, obviously they're in the garden. As they were saying this, the man is telling him, don't be arrogant, fear the punishment of Allah. Don't say this, that everything belongs to you. وَأُحِيطَ بِثَمَرِهِ, that the whole garden, Allah Azza wa Jal had surrounded it. And Allah Azza wa Jal had destroyed it. فَأَصْبَحَ يُقَلِّبُ كَفَّيْهِ عَلَى مَا أَنْفَقُ فِيهِ. That Allah had destroyed the garden completely. And Allah doesn't say with what. So some scholars, they say it was either a sort of like fire or a tornado or some sort of destructive thing that came and destroyed both of his gardens. So there was nothing left. And it was obviously being destroyed right in front of him. He can't do anything. Nothing can help him. And the man, he was very agitated. So he was doing signs with his hands because he doesn't know what to do. His whole palace has been destroyed. His garden has been destroyed right in front of his eyes. There's nothing he can do. And he was completely collapsed to the point that Allah says that it was like the roof had become the bottom. So to the point that there's nothing left of it. The roof of your house, you can imagine, The roof of the house was now at the bottom. Everything was buried and destroyed. And the man now feels remorse. But what use is this remorse after the adhab comes? After the punishment comes, there's no point of you turning back, because obviously you should turn back still from further punishments, but what's done is done. The punishment has come, you can't do anything. You should have turned back before the punishment had come. And after the adhab comes, there is no point of this man turning back. Obviously he's going to turn back and do his good deeds, but there's no undo, there's no reverse of this. وَلَمْ تَكُنْ لَهُ فِئَةٌ يَنْصُرُونَهُ. That he's saying that even though I have so many children, I've more or less got a whole community behind me, there is no one, Allah Azza wa Jal saying that he's got so many people, he's more or less got a whole army, because you can imagine so many children, so many cousins, friends and everything, they will obviously come and help him. There is nobody who could protect him from the punishment that had come. No one could protect him, and he couldn't protect himself, nor can he protect anyone else. And this shows that at a time of ease, again, this is very, very important for us to learn. At the time of ease, the Muslim and the Kafir, everyone enjoys ease. And at the time of distress, the dua is answered of the mu'min, but not of the fasiq or the kuffar. The dua of the mu'min is the one that's answered. And when the adhab comes, the Muslim is saved, and the kuffar and the fasiq are punished. And Allah Azza wa Jal will reward those who turn back to him. So obviously this man, he has now lost everything, and he's turned back to Allah Azza wa Jal. And Allah Azza wa Jal then moves on to the next story. And this just shows that you should never ever be arrogant, firstly. Being arrogant, Allah, like the Prophet ﷺ said, and this is another reminder that you cannot have a single atom, single speck of arrogance in your heart, because mankind, where are we from? We are made from dust, clay, earth, something so useless, something so even we don't touch. Does anyone go around and start touching mud because they want to? The little kids might do it for fun, but other than that, there's no one who wants to. No one wants to go and dig up dirt for fun, for themselves, and we are made of that same dirt. So Allah Azza wa Jal is saying that mankind cannot have a single speck of arrogance, because having arrogance, there is no point. Allah is the one who created you. You cannot have any arrogance whatsoever. And the Prophet ﷺ said that even one speck of arrogance will limit you, will stop you from entering Jannah. And obviously, wherever you are, whatever situation you're at, always remember to thank Allah. Always remember to thank Allah at the time of ease, at the time of difficulty. Because when the time comes, Allah Azza wa Jal will come to you. Allah Azza wa Jal will respond to your du'as. Don't be those who, at the time of ease, they're just chilling. They're not doing anything. And when the time of difficulty comes, they're like, oh Allah, help me. And then Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't help me. And then they're like, why doesn't Allah Azza wa Jal respond to our du'as? You have to understand that Allah Azza wa Jal will come to you when you come at the time of ease, when Allah has blessed you with many things. May Allah allow us to take many lessons from this. And we'll conclude here. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.